afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Chatbox Vail. We are your local podcast, and we gear towards all things mental health related, and I am super happy to be here. It's our first time being live on YouTube, everybody. What's up? I am here. My name is Liz. My fabulous guest host, Jen Saito.
Hello.
Hi, everybody, and we have an amazing guest today. This is John Tedstrom. He is with the Vail Valley Theater Company, but something else more important called the Vail Valley Voices. I'm going to call this segment 14 Tedstrom Talk. I like it. So I'm really happy to be here with you guys. And Jen, we've been doing this for several months now, and we're really excited. This is our first live YouTube broadcast. We have moved on over to the TV8 studios, and we couldn't be happier thanks to Danielle Turner, who is giving us this wonderful set and just all the good stuff, because we weren't that professional before this. So I really feels great to be here, and I'm super happy to have you here. And Jen, how was your week?
It was excellent.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You had a good week?
Good week, also recovering, but I think fully recovered now, so.
Oh, that's great, that's great. Well, I was sick all week, so that's why I look like this.
Trading spaces.
We had a rehearsal for something super special that we have coming up. This is something that I think is so important for so many people. It's kind of like a storytelling experience that you are throwing down. It's through the theater company, but it's called Vail Valley Voices.
Yes.
And I want you to give everybody an idea as to what to expect with this and why you are doing it.
Okay, great.
All right, and it's on April 6th at Route 6.
April 6th at Route 6 at 7:30. It's a live storytelling event, and it's kind of styled after the Moth Radio Hour that's made famous by NPR. It will be 10 or 12 live storytellers telling a 5 to 7 minute story about something important in their life. And ideally, there'll be a connection to Vail, how they got here or something that happened to them here. Lots of big emotional turning points, big important moments in their lives, funny things as well as emotional and kind of intense.
I know, I've heard a few of the stories, and I have to say, I was going to do an emotional, intense one, and then I was like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to throw it out there yet, so I picked a funny story to tell that happened in our family that changed everybody's lives. So it's still, even if there's this funny story, I always feel like it has something to do with all emotions, because really humor is always fathered through jest. What do they say? Life is mimicked by humor when it's sad. You know, like when you go through stuff that's even traumatic, sometimes you have to laugh at it, is where I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I think, in the traditions of storytelling go back thousands of years. It's the way that people communicated. It's how they built community. It's how they taught and passed down culture and history. And so there's a long history we as humans have of telling stories, going back to the cave paintings.
I was just thinking about the walls where they would carve on the walls or mark the walls and stuff. They were telling each other stuff.
Yeah. And
I
so
think that's fascinating.
This particular show was a brainchild of Beth Swearingen, who's really kind of the creative heart of the Vail Valley Theater Company. And the idea was, well, why can't we put on something like this and do it live to reach out to the community, get some new people engaged. And quite honestly, it's been fascinating for me to learn more about our community members, our neighbors and friends, and the amazing stories that they have to tell.
It's true. You learn a lot more about people through their stories and their experiences. I mean, Jen and I met a few years ago. We know each other so well because of each other telling each other all about each other. And it's how you get to know things about each other, whether it's good, bad, dirty, ugly, whatever it is, when you can get it out. Let me ask you a question. What made you think that people's personal stories would emanate through a crowd of people that they don't know?
Well, I think there's what I'm finding now. I mean, originally it was the great storytellings would be great entertainment and bring people in that would want to hear them. But what I'm finding is that there are common threads through all the stories, where you hear someone tell a story and it's like, wow, that resonates with my experience. It wasn't exactly the same, but I have a common link to that.
Right.
We have, one gentleman was talking about coming here for 20 years and finally retiring here and now living full time. And the reasons that he came here for a change in lifestyle that was much healthier, I mean, that's a real common link that many of us have. We left the rat race, so to speak, and came here for a different kind of lifestyle. So I'm hearing that in many of the stories that we're telling.
And that's wonderful. And also, the only thing that I have learned about being here, because I too am that person, you can change your lifestyle and you can move. but if you don't work on the things that were dark before you got here, they're just gonna follow you here. So there's still a way to get here and change your lifestyle, but you still have to work on yourself and all the things that you were going through, no matter where it was you lived, whether you lived in Boston or the sticks, and you came here. If you had stuff that you needed to reason with within your own self, you still have to do that.
Yeah.
Can't
And
bring
I
it with
think
you.
Two things. I've heard from many people, I don't have any stories. Well, in fact, next time you're sitting down with somebody having a cup of coffee, you're telling stories and you're sharing stories about yourself, which can be very emotionally freeing because you're bringing forward things that you may not have talked about a lot. But I'm also hearing people who through the process of writing down and thinking about and then delivering their story, that they're freed from stuff that may be troubling or scary or whatever, and they're able to kind of overcome that and face it in a new way.
It's so true.
And
it's
having
crazy.
the courage to get up in front of people and do that,
Yeah.
and, kudos to all of those folks.
Well, with that being said, so storytelling can be scary for people who are not used to putting themselves out there, especially if it's something vulnerable. So do you have any tips and tricks of how to tell the story and to hone in on like the important key pieces? And
Yeah, there's definitely an art to storytelling, and I'm learning a lot more about it now going through this process. So there are some very basics that we all learned in creative writing. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end, right? And we do need to deliver it in a specific time period. There's also it's important to have your stakes, is what we call it in the story, so that there's something that's happening to you that's important to you, and the audience wants to know what happens because they become kind of part of your story. And the emotional connections are what I find really are the things that people kind of get on the edge of their chair and they're like, wait a minute, what's going to happen here? And it becomes a much more kind of communal experience.
I agree 100%.
So there's some of those basics. And then there's a lot of tips and tricks about how to tell a story and how to get people engaged and things that are really fun to kind of dig into.
Absolutely.
I also think storytelling is a great icebreaker. Let's say you're on a first date. Wouldn't it be more fun to have a fun story to tell that person as opposed to sitting there like, so how's your steak? You know what I mean? It's a great icebreaker not only for a relationship, but maybe a friendship, or to build another situation with a family member that you haven't seen in a long time. I always feel like reminiscing or storytelling is a way to bring people together, always.
Yes. Yeah. Sitting around the Thanksgiving dinner table.
Absolutely.
Having coffee with friends.
Yeah, if you're not yelling at each other, you're telling stories.
I mean, it's how we communicate. Really.
Yeah.
It's kind of core.
It really, really is. And have you felt any sort of relief or release getting into the storytelling, as far as maybe just a little cathartic feeling or any sort of experiences that you've had that were always weighing on you, but once you were able to talk about it, it let it out?
I told a story when we did this once before a year ago, and I have a story for this show. They're tending to be kind of emotional moments for me, but they weren't necessarily difficult ones.
Okay.
I have leaned towards more funny stories.
Right.
Maybe a little embarrassing. The story that I'm thinking of telling in this show, it's definitely a turning point in my life, and it was like a whoa, holy crap kind of moment.
Right.
It's a little more on the embarrassing side.
Nothing wrong with that. That humbles us.
Yes.
Jen, I know you have stories in you. If you could
I
come
do.
up with a story right now, what would you think about to tell?
Well, I think that's interesting because I think, I having ADHD, when I think of the way I tell stories, and this is part of why I was like, oh gosh,
Panicked.
can I get up in front of people and tell a story? Is that, finding my beginning or my why, it's just kind of all over the place, and to condense my story into my feelings, into this 5-minute period, it feels overwhelming to me.
And do you think that's because you have ADHD and that causes you to panic because you have to get regimented and timely?
I honestly have been thinking about this a lot, and I think it comes from a little bit of trauma too, from past, where just, there's part of me that's like, oh, I don't have anything interesting to say, or
Please.
yeah, from just not necessarily having my voice be valued over and over and over again throughout my entire life,
Yeah, sure.
So I think there's part of it in that. You know, I think when it's also that being put on the spot to think of something. So,
Sure.
you know, with ADHD, for instance, when you're like, how was your weekend? Like, sometimes my brain is like, I have absolutely no idea what I
didn't
did
have
yesterday.
a weekend. I
eat
had a
breakfast
weekend
this morning.
What day?
Yeah. So sometimes like being put on the spot to, you know, tell a story, like it can be difficult, you know, in that moment.
Right.
And then I think it comes off like, oh wait, this is what I did. And then it comes off like, oh, like you don't know what you know.
Right.
It
And then you realize
takes
that
away-
you have it in you. You just
it's in me.
have
Yeah.
to formulate it and take time.
But in sometimes the way it's delivered, you know, I think it takes away the validity or the, you know, seriousness of people like thinking that like, oh, like she doesn't know what she's talking about or that kind of thing.
Well, that's also
And then-
something that you have to have security within your own self, because if you take charge of your story, it's your story.
Yeah,
Nobody can say you
absolutely.
don't know what you're talking about.
And I think that's the other part is that I feel like my story is so deep and there's so many things that have happened that it's really hard to hone in on key moments sometimes, you know, and be like, this is that thing that like,
Yeah.
you know, made me happy.
Do you know what I
Well,
did?
I think that you don't want to, I mean, the challenge that you're speaking of is you can go really big.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, 40 years of my life, or in my
Exactly.
case, 62 years of my life, and talk in 5 minutes. You can't do that.
Exactly.
But you could pick a
Yes.
piece.
But if you think, you're right, if you think about a moment and then think about what it meant to you or what you learned from it
Yeah.
or why it was important, and really focus on that, and then tell, okay, here's what happened, here's where I was, and then here's what was meaningful to me, I think it becomes a little easier.
I love that, and I love
Yes.
the structure that you just mentioned, because I think that's also part of it, is that I constantly feel like I'm running, like in my daily life, that I don't slow down to even reflect
Yeah.
in that way, to be
Yeah.
like, hey, like this is what happened, this is how I got from A to B, like, and so therefore I think, you know, we've talked about journaling before to tell stories.
Yes.
Like I think that's a huge key thing, but
Well, journaling
something
is
I'm
telling
not-
your story. You're
it is
writing it
telling your
down.
story. Absolutely.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, you know what I did when I decided to do this? Now, I've done stand-up, so I can get on stage in front of a bunch of people and be an idiot. But storytelling is a different scenario. It's different for everybody. I've never done this either. And I kept thinking about the Golden Girls with the Sophia. Picture it. Sicily, 1942. And then, but I mean, I kept putting her in my head, and then it actually literally gave me some sort of guide to imagine what I wanted to tell, because it is a theater of mind.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting,
I
like you
feel
said
that it's such a cathartic experience. I sat down and read a few different stories that I wanted to do, and just doing that alone made me feel really good and a little bit.
Well, it's interesting
Fixed.
what you just said, because you just said like it's comedy. To me, comedy is storytelling.
It's not though. It's really not. Well, it depends. There
Yeah.
are storytelling comedians, and you've seen them. They go up. They'll tell a full-on story, and they will have you dying. But they don't have you laughing every 3 seconds. A lot of comedy is, oh, if you don't get a laugh every 3 seconds, you're not great. But that's not true anymore. It's not that way.
Yeah.
But there's comics that are up there just banging them out. Banging out with the jokes and and just going and going and then there's comics that can tell you a 5-minute long story and keep you captivated during that time. It's an art, it's a gift for a comic to tell a very funny story, but for somebody that can just tell a story from their soul, it's a piece of cake. It really is. I mean, it's nerve-wracking. I mean, I'm scared, but I also think that it could bring to light something in somebody that's watching or listening, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, and overcoming that fear.
Big
is-
time.
I mean, I've been performing with the Vail Valley Theater Company for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I still look at it, it's about half completely terrifying and half completely exhilarating.
Yes.
And you just got to find the balance. And the terrifying part makes the other part better.
And that's kind of life, really. It's half exhilarating and half terrifying.
Yeah.
So you have to walk that line, and you have to make sure you're protecting yourself and keeping yourself good. And when things go wrong, you talk about it and you feel a little better.
And the great thing about stories, in a show, there's a script. And a lot of times people know when you screw up. In your story, it's your story. So you can tell it however you want to. In fact, you can make stuff up. I don't recommend it. But you can tell it the way you want to tell it and be comfortable that it's your story.
I was listening to a few people, and the way they bring you in, what I've noticed is they paint a pretty picture, or whatever the picture is that they're trying to do, but they describe the scene almost. Like it was dark and it was cold, and my hair was frayed, or you know what I mean? Like they will describe the way they looked, the way they felt, and the way it was, and where they were, and you literally can see everything they're saying if it's done in the proper way. And I think that if you're feeling it, you can emanate it.
Yeah, and there's actually science in what you're talking about.
Ooh, well, science, forget about it. I got a story about science. There was this girl in school. She couldn't pass, so she cheated. She memorized everything on the chalkboard, and then the next day wrote it all down, and then it all went away.
Not talking about that. But I studied empathy for years in my career.
Wow, really?
And storytelling has been shown with scientific research to connect people. So when you describe how your hand feels before you put the glove on, and how the rain came down on your face and you felt cold, and all the things you're describing, people feel that.
I agree.
You know? So the difference between I got in the car and I started the engine, and I got in the car, the seat was freezing. I shivered as I sat down. I put my gloves on the steering wheel, and then I started the car. You feel the vibrations of the car moving through your body. Those kinds of things, people are going, wow, I'm there.
I have the goosies. Do you too?
Which is why people who write stories tell that in their stories, because they're connecting with people.
That is so fascinating, and I really appreciate that piece of advice, because even in life, when you want to depict something or tell somebody, if you can give them a little bit more detail, it's understood a lot easier.
And you can put them in your scene.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really great for everyday life, what you're saying.
Yeah.
I love that, and I feel like we all have a story in us, and we all have many, many situations that we could discuss, but I find it to be so cathartic to be able to talk things out. I mean, we have the libraries here, and they always have story time, and they have the reading buddies, and they have things like that. So obviously, telling stories or reading stories, even as children, it manifests the imagination, and it just opens your mind to colors and worlds that you're not used to, and stories and places. And even if you weren't ever in Spain, if you hear somebody tell a story about Spain, if they do it right, you were there. You had that little cafe in your mouth.
And if you can describe, you're sitting in the hot sun in southern Spain, and you're pulling out your coffee, and you're tasting the coffee, and you're smelling the sounds, you're smelling
and you can hear the music on the
pastries
streets.
that are around you, and you can hear the music. That's the kind of story that's really compelling.
Beautiful. I love that. So if you were to describe yourself right now, I'm putting you right on the spot. This is what we call the hot seat on the chat box. If you were going to tell a story about sitting here right now, how would you go about it?
I think since I've never done a podcast before, and I haven't really been on camera that much before,
I love putting people
I would
on
really
the spot.
start by describing what that feels like, coming in here and seeing cameras and going, oh man, did I wear the right clothes? I didn't even know what I was going to do on screen.
Right.
I feel a little bit on edge, and then I found out we were talking about something that I really didn't feel like I was an expert in, and all those feelings come together to come into this, and then you sit down and realize it's a lot easier than it actually might think like it's going to be.
That's perfectly put, and I do think you are kind of an expert in this, because you are so good at everything that you do within the theater company and this storytelling, because I have heard some things that you have done, and I heard your story about the last time they did it, and you do have that gift, so you shouldn't sell yourself short on that one, because it's great having you here, and we have you here for a reason, because you really do emanate positivity, pride, happiness, and just being able to be expressive and being able to get your feelings out there and jumping through the comfort zone hoops is what I like to call them.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to bring you on, because I think it's important for everybody to have some sort of outlet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, we were discussing last week with Julie, a lot of people feel alone out here. A lot of people feel sad out here. A lot of people are experiencing loss or mental health issues and things like that. And when you find something that you could grab hold of and feel part of a certain kind of a community, it really changes everything.
Well, community is so important.
It really is.
I mean, all the way into the latest research about blue zones and living to be more than 100 years old, blue zones in Italy and other places around
What's
the
a
world.
blue zone?
Blue zone is where there's a much higher likelihood to be old.
So that's the color of their hair, is what we're saying.
Well, I don't know where the blue comes from actually, but to be, I think, older than 80, and many of them are over 100 in this area, and it has to do with diet and a bunch of other things. But community is definitely at the center of that.
I think when people thrive off each other and experience through things with each other, I do think it keeps you alive and happy and fulfilled. Don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I read a story yesterday about a bunch of people in Alta who are over 80 who are still all skiing together.
Wow,
and they
really?
ski, I don't know, a few times a week.
That's not the naked skiing you were
No,
talking
it's not
about.
that.
Okay.
That's a
That
whole
would have been
different thing.
exciting. I would have gone for that.
But they still get together. They still share their stories.
Amazing.
They still share this passion, even with the challenges of skiing when you're older,
Wow.
which they all acknowledge and say that's part of the challenge. And one guy said, "I got to keep up with my wife," which is exactly how I feel.
Oh my gosh.
So again, the community aspects are really important, I think, and it's been shown in lots of different places.
Absolutely. Out here as well. I
Yeah.
feel like people live longer and healthier lives here.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the Vail Valley Theater Company, to put a plug in,
Yeah, do
not
it.
only do we have Vail Valley Voices coming up on April 6th, we have a bunch of other programs that are part of our community outreach.
And this is what I want people to hear about. That way, if you're sitting at home and you're like, God, I want to be part of something.
Yeah.
I want to join in on something. I want to sing. I want to dance. I want to do improv. Or I want to maybe learn how to act or tell stories. So
Yep.
please do
So
let
we
everybody
have
know.
a theatrical dance class that
She's in
meets
that.
weekly. It's in partnership with the CMC. You can get all this information on our website, and that's vailtheater.org.
Okay.
Theater with an RE.org.
Theater.
Yes, and we have the dance class where it's no pressure. It's like get together, learn part of a famous Broadway dance number. And most of the people there are just doing it for fun. They're not interested in performing necessarily. We have our choreographers come in and teach, and it's super fun. We're doing a theatrical chorus where we're getting together and singing multi-part harmonies on really famous Broadway songs.
You're missing out without me in that class. Not really.
Super fun. Again, if all you want to do is sing,
Yeah.
you just like to be in a chorus,
Excuse
people
me.
singing around you. That's really fun. We have a monthly improv class that meets every the first or second
First.
First
Friday of every month.
Right.
And it's generally in the Town of Avon building.
And can I stop you there for a
Yes.
second? You know what's the best thing about improv? You don't have to have any talent. You don't have to have anything to start off this type of experience. Even though I do comedy, I was bad at improv. I tried it many years ago. It was super bad. And you didn't know anything about it. That's when we got close. Joining the improv group gives you this exhilarating feeling of self-worth almost, because you can't do anything wrong, and down the road you can, but at the beginning it's something that's so exciting to step out of that comfort zone and to try something and to be amongst a lot of other people that are doing it with you as well. There's nothing more fun, nothing more rewarding, and nothing more cathartic or exhilarating than to put yourself in a position where you have to be somebody else.
Well, and improv is storytelling.
It is, and you're playing off other people, and you're looking people in the eye that you might not know that well. And next thing you know, you just want to hug these people, and it's just the most beautiful feeling. So improv, I highly recommend.
And it also makes you more creative.
It does.
It makes
think
you
you're
quicker.
Not creative, you get out of the box. and
It
you're
makes you
trying new
quicker
things.
in the thinking box
Yeah,
too.
It's good for the brain.
Yeah,
So
all
we
know
have
that.
the dance class, the theatrical chorus, the improv. We have Vail Valley Voices, and we're starting actually a beginner improv class.
No way.
So there'll be 2 of them if people are intimidated, just for people who've never done it or have only done it a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
So again, go to the website and check that out. And then this summer, we're actually auditioning within about 10 days for our next big summer show. And that's going to be Cabaret.
Cabaret.
And the auditions are announced on the website as well. They'll be on April 11th and April 14th. Jen's my calendar helper. And obviously that's an amazing show and super relevant with all the things that are going on in the world today.
Absolutely, and it can be a little touching and a little, sad, but that's what life is, and that's where we can relate to this, and
Yeah.
it's going to be amazing. And all the people that are going to get parts or that looking forward to getting a part, or if you want to audition for a part, it's something that's such a wonderful experience. Just to be part of an ensemble, even if you've never done it before, is a really fascinating journey for everybody.
And I think all of those things are kind of related to storytelling in different ways, and they're all good for mental health because
Yes.
you're getting with other people, you're sharing the joy of doing something different, doing something together. They're all fantastic.
Right, and I know that most of you over at the theater, actually everybody at the theater company, have been remarkably patient and kind with people that have come in that are new and that have never done it before. You're really made to feel at home and comfortable, and they work with you and they guide you and they make you feel important and you're part of a family. It makes you feel part of a whole new group of people and a family atmosphere. And if you really have any feelings of feeling lonely or lost or anything like that, I highly recommend it. Now, I am happily married, but I did feel a void a couple of years ago. I felt a void in my life and I wasn't sure what was happening. I just felt like I was missing out on things, and I was doing wonderful things with myself. I was doing radio. I was here on TV8 doing morning TV shows and having a blast. Hated getting up, but I loved doing what I did. So I wasn't quite sure what I was missing, because I felt, well, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like this hole? And I decided to take a flying leap and do the improv classes. And the next thing you know, I'm in an ensemble play with a full cast, being an actress, which I've never in my life done. And all of a sudden I felt complete. And it wasn't that I wasn't a complete person, it was that I was missing something super duper exciting and creative in my life that I never had before. So it wasn't the things that I was doing that were bringing me down, it was the thing that I was missing that I had not experienced yet.
Absolutely.
And I have a few friends, but I didn't have like what I call this close, tight-knit community here. And now I have that. And I think maybe I needed that, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's just remarkable. Taking an art class, taking a pottery class, doing, there's Linka who does painting locally for everybody. There's so many outlets that you can do and get involved with and even volunteer for out here. Man, we have so many groups that are looking for people that want to volunteer and do good. You know, the Roundup River Ranch.
True for Vail Valley Theater Company too. If you're not into, you know, acting, and there's lots of ways you can volunteer and help and be part of the production. But those are also all on our website.
Yeah, but no, it's true. I mean, like, I don't sing and I don't dance, even though I did sing and dance in the film, in the play we were in, but thank God it was a comedy. Otherwise it would have been brutal.
Amazing.
But I don't sing and dance, so I wasn't going to audition for the play coming up. But I want to be part of the immersive experience for when people come in. I want to be dressed up. I want to say, come on in, darlings, or whatever I'm going to be doing. And sitting people down and getting them ready and excited for the show. It's still part of the program.
Absolutely.
It's still part of being a part of a community and just embracing people. And I can't say enough about the love and the light that comes through being part of something so exciting. And I just think it really, I mean, when you said for mental health reasons, it is so big and it's so important, because when you're starting to feel a little, you know, that blueness, for lack of a better word, if you have something to look forward to, or if you can get yourself excited about something, it changes your whole feelings.
And it's telling story in a group. And I mean, any show that you go to, like Cabaret, is a story.
Yes.
And we as actors are delivering the story in a way to engage the audience. So
Right.
it's all kind of connected to that.
I just think it's amazing. And you've branched out yourself just by joining the theater company. You sing now.
Well, it's funny because, you
And
know,
dance.
being a newbie and, you know, being as shy and like reserved, I feel like, as I am, I feel like there's something about kind of being able to escape yourself and develop this character and like be that become that character for a while. And like there was something where it's like, oh my gosh, I get to like be somebody that I'm afraid to be, or like, you know, because this is the character, and like therefore I can unapologetically can just, you know, go full force and like act in this certain way or in this mannerisms that this character should be.
Right.
And it was very freeing. It was just like almost like permission to be, you know, this part of me that I feel like I hide down. I'm like, oh, that's not proper. Oh, I can't do that.
And what did it do for your self-esteem?
Oh, it was amazing. And, you know, meeting just such amazing people who were so supportive, you know, and just willing to teach and let you learn, you know, and make mistakes and not, you know, there wasn't an expectation of being, you know, just perfect. You know, like we learned together, we grew together, and, you know, everybody was just so helpful in that process. And so I do feel like I gained a family, and there within, like, I think comes the confidence, because you just, you know, you feel so supported by this community.
And if you don't mind, before you went on this journey, how are you feeling before you joined forces with a whole new group of community?
I think it was like you, where I was, you know, we just mentioned, where, you know, I felt there was like a void, there was something, I was working just crazy, and that was my focus. That was like where my self-worth was, where it was just like, oh, my job, you know, getting everything done, like getting promoted, like that kind of thing. That's where I was focused, because I was trying to make money, you know.
Woo!
It's just important. We have to do
is,
it.
it is.
But this allowed me to really kind of find myself and
Nice.
the part of myself that I want to be and want to develop. I think because you have to make money to live and support children and not this and this and that, like, you know, all of the arts and the creative piece kind of slip to the wayside, you know,
Sure.
sometimes. Like, that's the last thing you focus on, because that feels like, oh,
Secondary.
I don't have time, or I'm not getting compensated for this financially, so like, can I do this? Can I even make room for this in my world, you know?
But spiritually, you're being compensated more than anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's what I learned. And that's, I had no idea.
Right.
Like,
You were stuck in a
how-
bubble.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I started volunteering as well. I started as a backstage assistant, and like, that's just meeting all these people with open arms who had never met me before, you know, just so open and welcoming, and they were having so much fun. I was like, I want to do this.
And now look at you. You're on the board of the VVTC, so
Oh,
that's a
yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
thing. And do you feel the same way, that it helps just bring a lot of light to your world? Just being involved with community
Sure,
people?
and my story is a little bit different because when we moved, well, my theater experience goes way back to high school, and then I didn't do anything.
Okay.
And we moved here, and I had 3 children, and I had a job that I was traveling literally every week for 20 years, and very rarely had a week off. So it was more a matter of, can I add something like this to my life and manage all of that, because it was something that I cared deeply about. My daughter actually asked me when she was 8 if I would do a show with her.
Aww.
And we did Peter Pan together, and I got to be Captain Hook.
That's awesome.
And it was amazing.
And
then
that brought back all the love for it,
I
right?
did, and I've been doing now two or more shows a year for 20 plus years.
That's amazing.
And if I can do it with that schedule, now I don't have that schedule anymore, but at the time I would figure out how to make rehearsals, and I would be rehearsing lines on my airplane flights and
I love
you
it.
know, all of that stuff. And people, you know, actually my colleagues would take videos of me practicing my lines and doing things when I'm sitting in an airplane seat across the hall, the aisle from them.
But it's good that you still brought that into your world, even though you had the chaos of the job and the family and everything else, the traveling, you still managed to keep that part of you,
Yeah.
which I feel is so important, because it gives you that little glimmer and that little bit of exciting feeling that you have, that life isn't all about just the trudgery.
Right.
You
And
know.
I had a fantastic family who let me do it, basically.
Yeah, you had a good wife, that's all I can say.
I still have the same one.
Yay! That's
I call
amazing. Going
her
away
my-
every weekend, I'd be like, I'm so bored.
There were lots of pros and cons, but
Yeah.
she's my first wife. But
And last.
yeah, so I think what I found is that doing these kinds of things, whether it's storytelling or singing or performing, it actually made my other parts of my life better.
That's
And
amazing.
So being in the field I was in, where I was presenting a lot and I was in front of people a lot, the ability to get out of any kind of situation and think on your feet was super helpful.
Absolutely.
And I think that works for a lot of people. Like
Oh, yeah,
if
without
you're
a
able
doubt.
to do that and you're able to sell an idea or sell a character or sell a song, then you can sell whatever
Life
you're
insurance.
selling, right? it all works together.
I agree. I think it would help anybody in their business world life or their personal life, just challenging yourself in any other special way other than what you're used to.
Well, I think like you and I both felt this, where like we felt like we caught a bug, whereas like after the first one we're like, what do we do next?
Yeah,
Like,
we were literally, we didn't know what to do with ourselves when it
Yes,
was over with.
exactly.
We both got the blues.
Yeah.
We were like, what do we do if we don't go to rehearsal every day? And now the play's over with, and there's
Absolutely.
definitely it's a real thing to have a little bit of post-production
Every
Post-show
show,
blues.
every
sadness.
show.
It's weird because you get so close with everybody, but the cool part about it is you're not saying goodbye to anybody. You're just going to move on to the next adventure with everybody, or just change things around and go on to the next, journey of your own. And I'm not saying that you have to be an actor or a singer or a dancer to find that contentment in your world. You can go do some art, go paint. I'm gonna start taking clay making classes. I'm nervous because I'm gonna make a big blob, but it's gonna be my blob. I'm gonna be proud of my blob. But what I'm saying is that just doing anything, even just sitting at home and starting to journal is huge. Writing out things, you wouldn't believe how cathartic that is. And you're telling yourself a story. You don't have to share it with anybody. It's not always about telling anybody a story. It's about immersing yourself in your own situation and expressing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have stories for almost everything, but the example there is that my father and his wife moved into a retirement community in Denver. And at first, he didn't like it. And he was actually making lists of all the things that he didn't like and wanted to share the list. And I sat down with him and said, well, why don't you make a list where every day you just write down one thing that you like about this place. And it completely turned it around, where within a month or few weeks, he was coming to us with his list of reasons that he liked it. So I think you can do that with almost anything.
Absolutely.
And
I
the
agree.
Power of writing something down. And there's actually a word, a Latin word, I'm forgetting it, but what writing it down means, it kind of makes it real.
I agree.
And takes it out of the ether and puts it down on a piece of paper, and it makes it something that's meaningful.
So journaling and just even capturing the way you feel about where you are is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big jump for them, and their independence is a little different now and all the other
Huge change.
stuff. So, but for you to give him that small little guideline, it turned the whole thing around.
Part
It's
of it,
amazing.
for sure.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
And I think that the more that he continues doing that, the more he'll embrace it. And how about your mom? Is she okay with the whole thing?
This is my dad's wife. You know, my mom passed
Okay,
away.
got you.
And I think she kind of went along for the ride. And
Aww.
they realized all the advantages of being in a place like that compared to
And they're
being
together.
out on their own. Yeah.
I mean, that's big, you know, because I think about people that lose their partner. I mean, I think about, losing my husband. What am I going to do with myself? You know what I mean? So there's like dichotomy of being excited about having a long-lasting relationship, and then what happens at the end? You know what I mean? So like, I worry about that all the time, and I shouldn't, but that's one of my fears. It's one of my fears of what would life be like without my second half, because I got so used to having that person with me, and they take such good care of me, and I know I do the same for them. But what I'm thinking is that, sometimes it's almost scarier to be with somebody for so long just to worry about what it's going to be like when they're gone. You know what I mean? But it's true. I'm speaking a truth that is a genuine fear.
Oh yeah.
Of probably a lot of people. I watched my mom go through my dad's passing. They were married 55 years. What do you do with yourself after 55 years when the guy that you've been hanging out with, even if he was a jackhole, you know what I mean? I'm not saying he was, but I'm saying even you just get used to the person you're with. Right? My dad was not a jackhole.
For the record.
He was a good guy. He was embarrassing a little bit, but still, that's another story for another time.
That's what dads do.
Yeah, he's part of my story I'm going to tell. But I mean, there's just so many things that we have in our world that give us uncomfortable feelings or something that we need an escape from. And that's why I feel like storytelling is something that's so huge. You don't have to be a narrator. You don't have to be a book writer. You don't even have to be an author or anything like that. You could be anybody, anywhere, anytime to think up or tell a story.
Yeah.
And I just think it makes us all feel like we're all part of the same orb, because we all have our stories, yet we all can relate. And that's important too.
That is important.
Yeah, and all those little moments that that become stories or are your stories, they're really what makes you who you are.
Absolutely.
There's this concept of the origin story, which the way I interpret the origin story is kind of where you came from and what are all the things that contributed to make you you today. And it takes some thinking to go through that, but I think that's super important in this process. Even whether you tell anybody that or not, it's great for you to think about.
See, I wish I could do that, but my family tree's been written in pencil. I'm not kidding. I don't know almost my whole half of where I come from.
Like I'm thinking, the
no
story
idea.
that comes to mind for me is that when I was 5, we moved from one town to another town, and I went into a kindergarten class that was already in progress, which is
Ooh,
pretty intimidating
that's
for
scary.
a little kid. And they happened to be having dress-up day, of all things. So I walk in the door, and this lady hands me a clown costume and said, "Go in there and put this on." And I went in the closet, and I sat there a minute. I'm like, I don't want to put this on. That's going to be weird. I'm going to
Yeah.
look like a silly fool. So I didn't do it.
Aw.
And I remember that to this day. Obviously, that was many, many years ago. And I think it became the part of me that says, I'm not going to let that happen again. And when I get into a situation that might be uncomfortable, I'm going to overcome it. And I'm going to challenge myself to do something that maybe is uncomfortable, get out of the comfort zone. And I've kept that as part of my life since then.
I
so
love that.
Little things like that, if you just think about it, you go, wow, really? Maybe that's why I'm like that, or maybe that happened in that way.
Absolutely. And doesn't it help you raise your well, they're probably a little grown up now, but I mean, it's probably helped you raise your kids and communicate with your wife and so many other things, because the more we can learn about ourselves, the better we are with others.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have courageous kids, not because of a lot that we did, but I think for a lot of reasons they're courageous as a result of a bunch of things.
Well, as we wrap up, do you have any special hot seat question you would like to throw at John, even though we already put him on the hot seat?
I think just going back to storytelling, like, you know, defining like that one like crucial moment, like, and you don't have to tell the story necessarily because it's last minutes, but like, at what point did you realize that like storytelling was so crucial to like your existence and your mental health, and like, was there an event that like, you know, you realized this is the way that I have to express this?
I think actually doing this live event last year kind of brought a bunch of things together for me to realize that I've been telling stories my whole life. And I don't think it's anything unusual. I think I think about a situation and want to tell people about it because I think it was funny or it was exciting or it was unusual. Like even, you know, I teach Nordic skiing at the Nordic Center in Beaver Creek, and I've got a zillion stories of the crazy people that come there and want to take Nordic skiing lessons. Most of them all fun, but like I'm this guy trying to tell people how to do this, and there's just situations everywhere that become something that you can share with people and connect in different ways. So I don't know if there was any moment that said, you know, I'm a big storyteller and I can help you with your mental health. It's just been part of me kind of doing my thing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's really magnificent, and I am so grateful that you came here today. I think that a lot of people don't realize that just telling a small story, whether it's to yourself, to your friends, to your family, or to a group of strangers, it is something that's cathartic and healing, and we all have stories within ourselves, and we all want to take care of ourselves mentally and physically, and being out here, being a part of any kind of community is important. I do recommend the Vail Valley Theater Company for anybody that wants to be part of a community or anything else out here. Joining one of our amazing non-for-profit organizations that we have here in our community there are so many. I wish I could reel them all off. They're all in my head swimming around, and they have a lot of them on TV 8 in the morning on Good Morning Vail, and you can watch that and see so many amazing people that give to our community, and that's what we're all about, being a part of a community, being part of everybody's mental health and well-being, and we just want to take care of everybody as much as we possibly can.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One more plug for Vail
Do it!
Valley Voices. April 6th, Route 6 Cafe. We're selling tickets on our website, and you'll be able to get them at the door as well, but I'd recommend getting them online ahead of time. And things like that will happen there. We have one woman who is telling a story she had never even told her husband.
Wow.
And first time she read through what she was going to tell him was the first time he heard it, and she's getting up in front of an audience and telling this amazing story.
That is
Well,
so
that's
There's going to be a lot of
Encourage.
powerful
These.
stuff.
Yep.
wow, that's amazing. Do you have any other last thoughts, Jen?
Just to the audience, you know, there's a reminder to get your story out there in whatever means possible, whether it be comedy, stand-up comedy, or, you know, writing, journaling, you know, joining a theater company and becoming an actor in whatever way. And it could be to yourself, it could be out to the world, but if, you know, it's important to get that out there.
I agree.
We've got one chance, one life to share our existence
or
with others.
Invite someone to coffee tomorrow and say, tell me your story.
Yes.
We
Isn't
don't
that
do
great?
We don't do that enough.
We don't do that
wow.
enough. Communication, everybody. Let's all
I
sit and chat,
love
shall
that.
we? I love that. All right, it's coffee time on the
Yes.
chat box. I like it. That's a really good. That's a great point.
Right?
Get together, tell your stories, feel good about one another, and help each other out along the way. Because life's a little rough sometimes. You know, we're all going through it, and we have a lot of stuff that we're facing. So when we have each other, when we have a tight knit community, and we can all talk to each other and tell our stories and be brave, then we can all get through together. Yay. Thank you so much for joining us, our very first live broadcast. That's right. I can't believe it. It's super exciting. Jen Saito, my fabulous, fabulous co-host, our wonderful guest, John Tedstrom from the Vail Valley Theater Company. I'm Liz Farron. Thank you so much. We hope something magical happens for you guys, and please do tell your story and be well.